All right, on this episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, excited to be talking to an individual who's part of the BYB Extreme fold in a big way. Gregory Bloom, named CEO of the company, and just a myriad of topics I want to get into, and excited to have Greg on the show. How's your day going so far there, man?
So far, so good.
And you're not necessarily like completely like new to the BYB fold, but like this newer position and everything like that. Like, how excited are you to kind of like advance to this position within the hierarchy? And just like, can you speak to the broader BYB experience you've had so far?
Sure. First off, I'm very excited with my new role as CEO, and I'm looking forward to taking the baton from Mike Vasquez and Dada and really running with it. It is a bit of a transition, coming from more of a boxing and MMA traditional background. I have been working with BYB the last 2.5, 3 years as the attorney, but now being elevated to this position, it's very exciting. I feel that the sport has a lot of runway to grow, and I'm looking forward to being part of that growth.
Yeah, and you mentioned having like other background in other combat sports like mixed martial arts and boxing. What was it about like bare knuckle that you've seen, I guess, in recent years where this seemed like a good thing to get yourself involved with? Because it seems like there's good trajectory to bare knuckle boxing domestically in the last few years.
Yeah, I think that this area of combat sports is under-recognized right now, and that's exciting to me. Being able to bring it more to the forefront, it's starting to gain a little traction over the last year and a half, but there's still a lot of places where it's not legal yet, which that's one of my main goals is going to be to try and broaden the acceptance throughout all 50 states. And I just think that it opens up a lane for a lot of combat sports athletes who otherwise wouldn't have as much opportunity.
Yeah, well, that's such a big part of it, just like the advocacy and the legalization of it. And I feel like probably with your background in law, you would have a nuanced understanding of that, and then just, doubling that understanding with like the combat sports localized kind of focus there. So yeah, I imagine that's something you'd be, quite excited about doing going forward.
Yeah, and I think that there's a misconception right now, similarly to how when mixed martial arts first started about 20 years ago, that it's extremely dangerous. Any combat sports obviously is dangerous, but bare knuckle fighting is, in my opinion, and from the medical data that I've seen, probably the least dangerous of all three of the major combat sports between boxing, MMA, and bare knuckle fighting. So I think it's really more a discussion of education than it is anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's that empirical evidence that shows that, like, even like with the handbrakes too, like, there's not really like much handbrakes in bare knuckle relative to other combat sports there. So, yeah, definitely something to put out there for sure. But you've had such a legacy in combat sports, almost 20 years within the space there. Like, when did you first get involved? Like, what was like the catalyst for getting involved in combat sports in your position?
It's a funny story. It was back in 2003. I was working out in a boxing gym, a knockout boxing gym in Miami, Florida, and I had just started law school, and I was approached by a fighter, Gilberto Reyes, who was at the time a ranked welterweight fighter who was having a contract dispute, and I assisted him through that and ended up managing him for a short while. And from there, other fighters started coming, and before I knew it, by the end of my first year of law school, I was representing about 20 MMA fighters and boxers.
Yeah, who were some of those like early fighters you were kind of representing there? Because I mean, it seems like you've facilitated a lot of great deals with a lot of like the bigger leagues, both in mixed martial arts and within boxing. Who was that like first initial crop of talent that you were getting in that work with there?
Early on, I worked with Brendan Schaub. Early on, Bobby Lashley, Alessio Sakura, Justin Wren. On the boxing side, I worked with Richard Brill, who was the WBA lightweight champion, and Zaire Rahim, ex-Olympian. So that was really in the early stages of my career.
And I'm also noticing that you've been a licensed promoter for the past 6 some odd years, and you've promoted around 70 live events there. Like, how important is it to kind of have that, aspect of the game as well? Just like having the experience in that space as well, it seemingly would pay dividends for what you're looking to do here.
Yeah, it allowed me to really understand the nuances of the business from the business side, and not just from the fighter representation side or the legal side. It allowed me to really make relationships with all the various commissions and understand all the effort that really gets put into putting on an event behind the scenes. So all of it was very educational, very helpful, and it's helped me really understand both sides of a combat sports event, whether on the fighter side or the promoter side.
Yeah, for sure. And just for someone who maybe wouldn't be familiar with like the machinations and day-to-day duties of, working with some of these like aforementioned athletes, like you talked about like Brendan Schaub and some other names like that. What does a day-to-day kind of, routine look like for someone like that? Like what would the duties be? They're putting out a lot of fires and stuff like that, or like what's the like main breakdown of the duties in that sense for maybe people who wouldn't know?
Yeah, well, back then it was pre the Reebok deal, pre-uniform deal. So a lot of work went into getting sponsorships and just negotiating fight purses and contracts and dealing with the day-to-day stuff that fighters go through, trying to take as much off their plate as possible so they can focus on training and getting prepared for their next fight.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of an interesting landscape in that regard too. Just, you talk about like, pre-Reebok deal and everything like that. It seems like the landscape is a tad different in that regard, and it seems like a lot more public discourse is being had about what constitutes fair pay and stuff like that. Like, do you follow a lot of that kind of stuff? Do you find that intriguing? Just maybe some of the guys out there, like say like Francis Ngannou off the top of my head, who are engaging in more public discourse about fighter pay and things of that nature.
Yeah, no, all of that is very interesting, and I do see it from both sides of the fighter side and from the promoter side, because I've been deeply ingrained in both. When I first started in the business, an older manager told me something that stuck with me to today. He said 95% of the people in combat sports make 5% of the money, and 5% of the people make 95% of the money. So there's a tremendous disparity, and there's only really a few ways for these athletes to make money, and one of those lanes was sponsorships, endorsement deals, and the fights themselves. So it's a job of independent contractors, and so it's really difficult. As a fighter, you only have a real small window to capitalize on your successes, but as a promoter, you also have to manage the budgets, and you can't just throw money at athletes who aren't necessarily moving the needle. So it's a real balancing act, but I see it from both sides.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time for sure, and everything like that. And that would probably help with the bare knuckle space. Just like within MMA, I feel like it's beneficial in the independent contractor status to have like multiple different places that you can talk to and just kind of gauge where they're at and I guess how they sort of see you. And it feels like BYB is making bigger strides to do that as well in the space and just collaborating with some other leagues like BKB. So yeah, definitely doing some great stuff to provide like broader opportunities for bare knuckle and to also grow the sport on a broader level.
Yeah, definitely. With BYB, we are looking to immediately continue the trajectory and push towards the number one sports property in the genre. Mike Vasquez has done a fantastic job in creating this alliance with BKB, hoping to collectively spread the word of what we're doing here, to grow the eyeballs that will be on the bare knuckle space in general. And I think that the ability to work together and sort of play nice in the sandbox with others is only going to be a benefit to the sport as a whole.
Yeah, and from what I understand too, like I mean, obviously you're in this CEO position and handling a lot of like the day-to-day operations of the promotion, but it also seems like Mike Vasquez is still very much, a figurehead and very prominent and focusing on certain big picture kind of things. Is there a level of collaboration between your two positions? I mean, I would think so on a broader level of just, the company collaborating as a collective, but is there a lot of like direct communication you guys would have, or is it kind of like you guys have your own defined lanes going forward?
No. It's a total collaboration. I mean, we both do have defined lanes where we are going to take on certain responsibilities, all for the benefit of the company. But we speak multiple times a day, and it's a total collaboration.
Yeah, and some of the language too, like focusing on major growth and partnerships throughout 2023. Like, what does that represent to you? Do you have like specific like benchmark, like mapped out kind of goals for the calendar year, like certain particular things you would like to actualize into reality?
Yes. Number one, like I mentioned, is going to be getting the scope of states where we can have events and people can participate, looking to have that grow. That's number one. Number two is going to be looking for a media partner, because, again, that's going to go hand in hand with that type of growth. And then the third thing is going to be looking for sponsorship partners to grow with us as we are looking to build the brand.
Yeah, like some sort of like regular streaming platform or like broadcast kind of medium whereby people can check out the fights. Talking about that.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of people who are thirsty for content right now, and we believe that BYB has a product that needs to get eyeballs on it. It's so exciting. The Trigon forces the action. We have 90% knockout rates. It's built for television, and so we just need to be able to sit down with the proper partner to help us grow.
Yeah, and obviously something you'd be quite familiar with, even through your role in Combate Global there, just like facilitating deals with like ESPN, Univision, Telemundo. Would that be, I mean, not specifically those platforms per se, but something of that kind of caliber and persuasion for something like BYB?
100%. Something similar. We feel that the product that we have is ready to be put on the big stage, and that any one of these major media partners would be lucky to have us.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting time for the company and everything like that, and just cool to follow along with for sure. And yeah, quite the resume. I was getting fired up seeing the Strike Force stuff for sure. I remember that promotion from back in the day. Definitely fun to watch there for sure. Who were some of the Strike Force fighters that you were prominently kind of representing through that time?
Well, at the time, my dealings with Strike Force were mainly when I was working with Bobby Lashley, trying to get him involved in that company. We worked with some other fighters, Raffaello Tractor Oliveira, who participated. We were looking to have him participate, but instead he ended up going to the UFC. And that was really it with Strike Force. I only had a few dealings with them, and then eventually they got purchased by the UFC, so everything sort of melted into that.
Yeah, Bobby Lashley, an interesting personality. Like I saw an article pop up a little bit ago saying that there was like an offer put out to him to do bare knuckle. Who knows? Maybe you give him a call up and he steps in the Trigon. That would be quite the sight to behold.
It would be very interesting, no doubt.
Does that sort of play into it a little bit, though, in a sense? Like maybe like some old kind of like, have you experienced that a little bit yet? Like maybe some like past clients, people you've interacted with who are kind of seeing what you're doing in BYB, because bare knuckle is very interesting in the free agency market because it appeals to like boxers and MMA fighters alike. Have you gotten any even feelers as of yet from people kind of just like seeing what's going on with BYB and maybe wanting to test their mettle in a bare knuckle context?
I haven't yet, but my phone is wide open for anyone who'd like to call me and is interested in coming to BYB.
Yeah, it's a great promotion and been very fun to follow along with from my perspectives for sure. But you've been great with your time, man, and I appreciate you giving some great insights. I'm just sort of curious, though, if maybe there's like a parting thought that you might want to kind of add as we're wrapping up here, though, man.
I would just like to tell anyone who's listening to keep your eyes on BYB going forward. 2023 is going to be a tremendous year for the promotion. We are going to grow by leaps and bounds, and you're going to see us coming to your part of town very, very soon.
Yeah, hopefully we can get you up to my neck of the woods in Canada here and bring the Trigon to the Great White North.
We'd look forward to that. We would definitely look forward to that.
Well, there's a lot to look forward to in general, and yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show with the backdrop of this recent CEO promotion and everything, man. And yeah, thanks so much for providing some great insights and looking forward to seeing the residual growth with BYB going forward there.
Thanks, Dylan. Thank you for